Warning, this podcast contains spoilers. What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Family Guy Season 13 podcast, Episode 1, The Simpsons Guy. I'm your host, Dom. With me is my co-host, Patrick.
What's going on, everybody?
How's it going, Pat?
Yeah, not bad, not bad.
So, typically, we don't cover Family Guy, and I don't think a usual, typical podcast would be very long if we were, so it's almost not worth doing. However, this is a kind of a special circumstance, right?
Well, we kind of have two shows wrapped into one, and it's an hour-long episode as opposed to the 30 minutes.
Right. And this is also the first time in history that Simpsons have officially crossed over to another platform, another show, so to speak.
Right, we've had some instances where, South Park made fun of South Park made fun of Simpsons, bringing up the whole Simpsons Did It episode.
Yep.
And then we also had Family Guy poking fun at Simpsons little by little with the Quagmire incidents in the middle of the episodes.
Right.
Where Quagmire has the affair with Marge, and then in turn kills off the Simpsons because they all find out that the affair happened.
Yeah. It's This was kind of a crazy episode. They pretty much hit every joke that they could. I mean, there's still room that they could if they decide, but we go right into the episode, and one of the first things that Brian was like, or it was Brian and Lois had said, Lois said, "Oh, this is a nice place, we should come by and visit again," and Brian was like, "I think this is a one-time deal." So, based off that, I don't really see The Simpsons going to Family Guy again, but what do you think about Family Guy going to The Simpsons?
I don't think it's going to happen.
And the other way around, The Simpsons going to Family Guy. I said that backwards.
I think this is going to be like a one-time hurrah. Mm-hmm. Kind of bringing up, before that, we had Chris talking about, while they're sitting on the couch, talking about the two shows beforehand, The Modern Family and what was the
All
other?
in the Family?
All in the Family episode going on. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, this doesn't affect anything with the shows. This is actually creative and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's essentially saying, okay, well, we need to start with something. You know, we need to bring up the fact that these shows have been in constant conflict ever since, you know, Family Guy originated.
Right.
That it wasn't original.
Right.
So, you know what? We're going to make fun of it the whole damn time.
I was kind of surprised that they chose to bring The Simpsons over to Family Guy instead of vice versa. But they couldn't get away with half the gags that they did if Family Guy went over to The Simpsons. Because Simpsons, they were very controversial at the time that they came out. But to today's standards, they're far from it.
Yeah, they're a little more wholesome and clean.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, I remember, what was the first episode ever of The Simpsons? I think I remember sitting down watching it. It was when Bart got a tattoo. And, like, that was a big deal. Like, yeah. And then Marge, like, dragged them back and they got it removed. And, you know, it was a huge deal. And that was, like, a big controversial topic. But the stuff Family Guy covers, like, the beginning of this episode, the For Pete's Sake comments, the comics or whatever. Like, those are pretty bad.
Oh, the last couple were epic.
They were hysterical, but they're hysterical in knowing that it's wrong. It's not like, you know, the viewers and stuff today, they're well aware that, like, you can make fun of something without meaning that that's the way it is, right? It's a joke, it went over. I don't know, did the internet get outraged over that? I know it did in the continuity of the show, but I don't think I heard anybody. I think the biggest thing was the rape joke, which is what Stewie said over the phone to Moe's Tavern.
Right, that was the only one that caused any kind of controversy whatsoever.
Right.
All the other ones kind of were like, oh yeah, well, we kind of expect this, essentially.
Yeah. I'm glad that they kept the joke intact, because I don't care for censorship. Like, I believe you created something, you should do it and express it the way it was created. Do I agree with the context of the joke? No, I'm not. I'm not an advocate of rape by any means, but I'm glad that that's what they chose to do and they stuck with it instead of bending toward what the community, the outrage wanted. I'm glad they stuck to their guns on that. So, there were so many references though. Like, in typical Family Guy fashion, though, we had the Homer and Peter Griffin are a better team than, and he's like he was teaching Homer, how to do it, and we saw what was it? It was the U.S. Air Force. Is that what he said?
Yeah, it was better than the U.S. Air Force, and then we see a reference to the World War II kind of dog fighting.
Yep.
Where in turn, once they shoot down the Nazi plane, you see the guy from Bob's Burgers, Bob, actually pop up.
Okay. And see, I'm not familiar with Bob's Burgers, so what is that? I didn't get that reference.
It's the show in between. Like, there's the 8 o'clock where it's Simpsons, 8:30 is Bob's Burgers, and then 9 o'clock is Family Guy.
Okay.
It's a show strictly about a family that has their own restaurant and grill, and all the controversy that goes on because one of the daughters is like Meg, where she's just plain gross. One of them is scatterbrained and like ADD. And the boy is just plain stupid.
Right.
So it's essentially almost like another Family Guy kind of Simpsons thing rolled in, and they tried to do it, and it's horrible graphics. Honestly, the way they explained it, even going later on, it's crap. It's a crap show, and the only reason why it's probably still surviving is because it's between Simpsons and Family Guy.
I mean, they even made a joke to that later on in the episode where they agreed, they had, Homer and Peter had their big fight, and they agreed, let's stay half an hour apart with a pile of garbage between us. So, I knew they were referencing something there. I thought that they may have been talking about Brooklyn 99, but that's kind of a newer show, and I haven't had a chance to watch that yet, so I didn't know for sure if that's what they were talking about, but, so, it's Bob's Burgers,
Yeah, it's Bob's Burgers is the show in between them.
Okay, awesome. There was another part in that particular thing. He goes, "Yeah, we have to carry this guy. Who is he? We have to carry this guy. I mean, look at him. We tried to let him go off on his own, and look what happened. Then you see Cleveland crashing and burning, which they made fun of their own spinoff. I think that was genius because Cleveland got canceled, and that's really not much of a surprise. The show didn't have a lot of substance to it. But they stay true. They poke fun at themselves like they do normally. But, what was it? Another one jab that they took at themselves is when they were fighting in the nuclear power plant, and Homer grabbed the Golden Globes and started throwing them at Peter, and he's like, hey, I don't have any of those. That's not fair.
What was also one of the biggest epic turns, I thought, was the court case in general, where literally they sat everybody almost paired off together. Mm-hmm. You have both the mayors, Adam West, and I forgot the other mayor's name offhand for Simpsons.
Mayor Quincy?
No, that's Chief Quimby's police chief.
See, the thing is, I'm not a very avid Family Guy follower, right? I catch it here and there, but I don't watch it every week. You, on the other hand, you catch it all the time.
If I don't catch
every episode.
Yeah, if I don't catch it live, I'm catching it on the news feeds.
Right.
Or on the repeats on Hulu.
Simpsons, I used to watch a lot of Simpsons, and I haven't watched Simpsons in forever.
The mayor's one that you kind of pass through, but then you also have Consuela with the Bumblebee. Mm-hmm. You have, essentially later on, they even have Cleveland sitting next to, I keep on forgetting some of the names of the Simpsons characters, but you have both of them sitting there, and they're like, oh, well, you know why they paired us up together? And you were honestly thinking they're going to say, oh, you're the only two black characters in the damn shows.
Right.
It's like, nope, we're the two funniest guys here. And it's like, yeah, all right, we got this.
Yeah.
They paired everybody off essentially saying almost like a big, hey, you've been copying us since day one. We've been around for 24 years. You guys have been along a lot less. What are they at? Season 13? So
Family Guy season 15.
Give them a year or two off that they had when they were off air, so 15 years. You know, you been copyist the whole damn time.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with going with the Pawtucket, Patriot essentially being Duff Beer.
Oh, that was great. I thought that was a great scene, and then it ended up boiling over into the chicken fight. Essentially, is kind of what caused that whole incident. And I love the way that they handled it at the end. They didn't like close down the Pawtucket factory. They're just like, they're never gonna come here to challenge us. So
That's the last straw to say, like, look, this is a one-time bit.
right.
Because, why would they need to continue it?
Yeah.
It
It's
was a
true, but
nice
this
thing.
also was the highest rated episode of the Family Guy show in the longest time. Like, this is the highest rated show that they've had for I don't even know how long.
I would think that, okay, yeah, it was the highest rated, but the next step is, okay, who else are we going to be bringing in?
Right.
Maybe it's time to bring in South Park.
Whew.
We already did it once on South Park's part, where they made fun of Family Guy and the way it was scripted to
Right.
say that manatees were telling how
They're
the
just
how the
pushing
episode
jokes together, yeah. Yeah,
So it could be a possibility that what they fly across to Colorado and stumble upon this place and
yeah.
essentially start from square one, making fun of it with the graphics like they already did with Simpsons. Oh, don't drink the water. It seems like everybody has hepatitis.
That was probably my favorite joke of the whole episode.
Not hepatitis. I forgot what the.
Yeah, he said hepatitis.
Yeah.
That was it explains why they're all like yellow and Peter and them are normal skin color. It was that was probably my favorite joke because I didn't think they were gonna allude to that. Or then I liked when Brian and Stewie are having that conversation and he goes, what state is this? And he goes, I don't think we're allowed to say. It's just because that's been a running joke in The Simpsons forever too. They even addressed it in the movie and they said it was on the border and they named the border of every state that Springfield, the town was, it's what, in 3 or 4 different towns, and they named like 4 different completely states in the U.S. map that are not even touching it.
What I loved even better on top of it was having the Kool-Aid guy bust through the wrong courtroom.
Yeah.
And he calls up because they're waiting for him to bust through, and he goes, yeah, I'm at the wrong Springfield. Like, and just like click right over to the next gag.
Well, what did you think about the guest appearance from Fred Flintstone?
I understand it. It probably wasn't needed as much.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of those like, oh, we're kind of funny off the beginning, and then it's like, okay, wrap it up. Let's get to the next part because it makes sense because yet again, Seth actually learned how to draw and how to become an animator from Hanna-Barbera.
Right.
And he's
Which is
also
a lot of
working,
where these people came from too.
Yeah, and he's working on a live-action remake of Flintstones.
Ooh, I don't know how I feel about that. First 2 movies didn't go over very well.
Some of it's going to be hit or miss because Ted was a pretty good one. But his, Million Ways to Die in the West, or, that was just, it was hit or miss. It had its points. I would watch it again, but it's not one to, break, break the theaters,
Right.
break
And
the for you.
I don't know. For me, like you take a movie like that, which you just get. I thought the funniest scene was the Doc Brown scene in that movie, and because it was basically the entire setting was the old Wild West theme, set that they used for the Back to the Future Part 3 movie. So when they brought Doc Brown in there, the weather experiment, I just thought that was kind of clever and really unique, and I laughed at that really, really good. But that's also something I saw in the previews. So that brings me to the point of this. Was there anything really super shocking and outstanding on this episode that they didn't show you in the previews?
There were some. I liked the whole interaction between Bart and Stewie, where you finally get to see Stewie become, before we think of Stewie as being that whole kind of nice and a little bit more wholesome in these recent seasons, where it's not like, damn you, vile woman, or I'm going to try to take over the world one way or another. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, let's impress Bart. I know that you're a mischief person. Well, I'm going to capture every single one of your villains per se, and put them in a torture device as a present to you so you can torture them.
Right.
But that's not Bart's case. Bart likes to cause mischief. He doesn't like to cause harm.
Right. And he was extremely put off by that. And Stewie kind of shrugged it off as, I don't care. And then you see him at the end of the episode writing on the chalkboard, whatever, and crying, pulling, the Simpsons gag with the chalkboard or whatever. And I thought that was clever too, because I expected that in the beginning of the episode. It wasn't there, and it was the end of the episode. But it still wasn't over from there. They did the that little dun 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 dun, like, that song that plays at the end of every Simpsons episode.
Yep.
They played it, and they had Peter singing lyrics over it, and that right there is what actually, like, brought that episode to a closure to me. Like, when I heard that, I was like, bravo,
Well, this finally shows to a lot of the masses in general that Family Guy has a lot of respect for the Simpsons.
They do.
What they laid out there. And I think that also showed with the whole Meg and Lisa kind of relationship going on, where at the end of it, Meg's like, look, Lisa, I'll never forget you. I carved your name in my arm. It's like, wow, I know you're going really far and morbid on this because, of course, that's how Family Guy is.
Yep.
But it kind of gives its own little tip of the hat to thank you for the 24 plus years that you've been on air.
Right.
You guys set the groundwork for us to even push the envelope even farther.
Yeah. I mean, there were some other minor references, like Snowball the cat, when Meg's like, I just love to kill cats, something. Lisa's like, it's a good thing we don't have a cat. You close the door and you see Snowball right there. Like, that was great. I love that little scene. The Peter and the Brian and Santa's Little Helper back and forth, like, between what the two dogs are in each universe. Like, I love that whole relationship that the two of them had.
I loved even better when he's running away and they run into the Krusty Burger and you find out that the meat is actually dog meat.
Yeah.
I was like, and yes, we finally get back to the reference that his food is not real.
Yep. I mean, that's been going on for the longest time in The Simpsons. So, whether or not that stuff is officially canon is, I don't know. I can't say for sure. Because obviously The Simpsons let them do this. They had to have approved all the jokes and everything like that. But whether or not it's canon within their own show's universe is another story. What do you think about that?
I know with the Krusty one, they did mention it multiple times that it's not actual meat.
Right.
Because there was the whole, is the Krusty Riblet, where Homer is essentially going through and traveling around on a hippie bus to every place where the rib witch is still going on.
Mm-hmm.
And they banned it because it wasn't technically really meat. And that's why they closed it off. And that was that whole time was the controversy with the McRib from McDonald's.
Right.
So I remember that episode that they actually marked that it wasn't really meat. And there's multiple times that they make fun of the food at Krusty Burger where they're rubbing the wall and all of a sudden it becomes crystal clear and it looks like a window.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not too far-fetched. It's just a tie in the fact of, look, the dog ran away completely. We can't find the dog.
Right. Yeah, so I'm curious how many of the jokes that they consider canon and what they don't, because there were, for the most part, everything was fairly reasonable, and like you said, the dog one, it tied in, but is it officially canon that the Krusty Burgers are made of dog meat? It very well might be, but that's something that I don't know if we'll ever get a straight answer on. But I did like the minor reference that they had to the Treehouse of Horror, which is very small. If you missed it, like, all it was mentioned was something about that, something, I forget how it was worded now, something about a tree in the backyard, but it was alluded to the fact that it's like a tree that's not always there, which cracks me up because there was an episode where Homer like moved into the treehouse and lived there, and then like every Halloween, the Treehouse of Horror, this tree's there. But whenever they show like an exterior shot of the house, the tree is not where it's supposed to be in regards to these episodes. So it's like the tree just comes and goes as it's needed, and like Brian made a point, I believe, or even was it Peter? I don't remember. One of them made a point to point out that this tree just kind of appears when it's needed.
It was Brian, because Brian said that Santa's Little Helper went out with the other dog that was having a play date in the kitchen when they were making up that trying to allude that the dog wasn't lost.
Mm-hmm.
It said, "Oh, he's laying down in the shade of that tree that no one knows where the hell it is."
Yeah, that was it. So
you had that reference, and then on top of it, you had the reference of the aliens again.
yes, and sticking Roger in there from American Dad, that was great. Because we didn't see him in the preview that they showed us on the TV. I think he was actually, like, his cell was actually removed from the animation frame in which they were showing, because we saw the whole scene where they got sucked down into the thing, and Roger was clearly visible when that happened, and we did not see that on the preview. Also, the bus scene when Homer and Peter were fighting in the bus, when they first got into the bus, you didn't see the kids lying in the grass in the background in the initial preview that we saw, but then in the episode, when that same scene happens, you see the kids sprawled out on the grass where they like plowed through them all. You know? So I guess it comes down to, like you said, the South Park is, what other possibilities can they come with? Because they've raised the bar now, right? They've set the new standard. This is like new territory. Like, crossovers are not new by any means, but for two rival groups like this to come together, like Marvel and DC, I think did it for a brief period. Like they had the I forget, there was a comic, I remember Superman took Thor's hammer. Like I remember, like, yeah, it's something to do with that. I didn't actually read the comic, but I remember seeing it and hearing about it. But for like TV to get two rivals on the same show working together is really a new bar. So where else do you think we're going to see this now?
Well, I honestly think that there is going to be one with South Park, but I am going to reflect to my little voice in the corner over here that's not on screen, that brought a triple crossover as a possibility, where we could have Simpsons, Family Guy, and South Park all together.
That would be amazing.
We get chaotic.
Because in turn, what's to say that the Simpsons don't magically get on the same flight as the Griffins flying, and somehow something happens and the plane crashes in Colorado?
It could. It very well could. And I mean, that goes back to, we had the movie a couple years ago. It's Michelle's favorite movie, Freddy vs. Jason. They planned on making a sequel to that, and it was going to be Freddy vs. Jason versus Ash. But it never came to be. So, I would love to see South Park involved in this. My big problem with South Park, though, is the animation style is extremely different. Simpsons, Family Guy are similar. They kind of got away with it. And then they even teased us what they would look like. We saw Homer and Peter, what they would look like drawn in the other universe.
Right.
And
I saw that in that other style when they were changing over in the nuclear power plant.
Yeah. And like you saw, like when Homer got switched over his art style, like he had a belt on because he was drawn in the Family Guy style, but Peter didn't have a belt. So it's like, that goes to show me, like, little details like that. It was like, and it was like a quick second, so I don't even know how I noticed this, but it was like, does nobody in The Simpsons wear belts? You know, it's just like the way they drew it. I don't know, it was weird. But South Park is a very different style of animation, so it would kind of be awkward for them to all get thrown together. Like, we've already established South Park and Simpsons can do it. But, I mean, South Park. Family Guy and Simpsons can do it, but can South Park fit into these other universes, other styles? I don't know.
It'd be one that's extremely difficult. And the reason why I'm saying that at the same point, I have on mute the last week's episode of South Park.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to look at it in the perspective of, it is 3 different graphic styles. And it is true. Simpsons has developed enough to be able to mold into almost a Family Guy graphics.
Right.
Where, they can get away with doing the crossover. It would be something where, in turn, one of them has to lose the integrity of their graphics.
Yeah.
Now, it's a possibility. It all depends. If Trey and Matt actually take over the whole drawing aspect of it, then it's possible. They've shown before that they have done pretty decent, likenesses to both styles.
Right. I could see everything fitting in South Park and just doing it all paper cutout. Like, you could still have them animated fairly close to what they look like now, but just in a more flat paper format.
And I could see that once, if we're doing it in they crashed in Colorado or somehow got a detour into Colorado.
Right.
Then in turn, once they're in the territory of South Park, for them to be in that kind of style would make sense. Because, we're in a whole different area.
Yeah. The Simpsons and Family Guy, I don't think bringing South Park into their universe would be as good, because I don't think animating South Park to look like Family Guy or The Simpsons would have as good of an impact. The characters would just end up looking awkward and out of place.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Hopefully we see some kind of crossover again in the future. They've definitely set the bar for this. They've shown that it can be done, and they've shown that 2 companies like this can work together. So, I don't know. You have anything else you want to throw out there for this episode?
The last but not least part is we didn't mention the whole Dr. Nick, Dr. Hartman.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love the fact of those 2 characters being the most incompetent doctors ever. And they show them literally sitting together yet again in the court scene and proving the fact that they're the most incompetent people.
Yeah. Oh, the dog doctor has finally arrived. Like, yeah, about that.
Oh, you sure bleed a lot. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh, God.
It sounds like something that you would hear from Dr. Hartman.
Pretty much. All right, I think that wraps things up here. Pat, you got somewhere people can follow you?
You can find me time and space. Still working on trying to get something going, but I don't know.
On that couch right there watching Family Guy.
Yeah.
You could find me down below or even up above, wherever you want to look. Find me in one of those 2 places. Phenomenon, PHENOMEDOM. You can also find all of us and more on Twitter, Facebook, Gmail, G+, and right here on YouTube at /ASOTV podcast. More podcasts for some of your favorite TV shows. Stay tuned. We got Sleepy Hollow coming up next.
Giggity.
Catch you guys later.